Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. No matter what time it is, we want to thank you for listening to Capture the Game. It's the Game Within the Game podcast featuring me, your co-host Desmond Jones. Today I'm flying solo. Brady is unable to make it today. Just for our listeners out there, I want you to know that this Capture the Game is sponsored by Capture Sports Agency, where our CEO is Chantel Smith Jones. So we just thank you for the support and that Capture Sports has brought to us so far. But today, enough of the intros. Y'all already know it's another episode. That's why y'all tuning in. It is today we bring to you a sports agent. That's right, a sports agent. His name is Juan Lopez. How are you doing today?
I'm good, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. Man, so great to have you on, man. So just really thank you for your time and to hopping on and do this podcast with us, man.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course, of course. Can you go ahead and tell the audience a little bit about yourself so they can get to know who you are?
Well, like I said, name is Juan Lopez. Um, I live in South Florida, about 40 miles west of Fort Lauderdale. Um, Puerto Rican. Was born in Puerto Rico, raised in New Jersey. So if you hear my Jersey accent come out every now and then, forgive me. I live in Florida, but Jersey's home. So uh, that's that's where my heart is. Been a sports agent for about 12 years now. Opened up my agency back sometime in '08, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a while now. I specialize in baseball players, and I've been doing that for quite a while now. It's been a heck of a journey so far.
That's awesome. What made you start off your sports agency back in '08 or
Well,
roughly?
I've been a sports nut since I can remember.
Yeah.
It's been a passion of mine since practically birth. Back going back to Jersey and being from the Northeast. New York and New Jersey, they're great sports towns, and I was raised a Mets fan, so it was all about the Mets for me and whatnot. And I wanted to eventually, like every young child and teenager growing up, wanted to play in the major leagues, but never got the opportunity to do so. But I still made it to the bigs. I still made it to the major leagues. I worked for the Florida Marlins, now known as the Miami Marlins, for 8 years. Uh, while I was getting my master's degree, they brought me on staff, and I learned a lot about the business from that standpoint. Um, I knew I wanted to represent players at some time prior to joining the Marlins, but I think while I worked for them, I learned so much about the business that it prepared me to at another level to be able to represent players adequately and professionally.
Now that's incredible. So how was it like working for the Florida Marlins at the time, who's known as the Miami Marlins?
It was an experience. It was I did my internship with them. I wasn't thinking it would probably lead to an 8-year career with them, but I worked hard, um, sweated a lot, ran all over the stadium, uh, getting stuff done for the production part of the game, the behind the scenes stories that you don't see during a broadcast of the games and whatnot. It's a really crazy time because you have to be at certain locations during the game. You have to follow a script. If you have to be at section 104 during the fourth inning, you better get there at the bottom three, because if you're not there at the top four, you got the producer yelling in your ear, "Where are you? Where are you? Where are you?" And you got to jump out of the stands and say, "Hey, just make sure, hey, I'm here. I'm here. Can you see me? I'm here." Um, but that was all. That was great. That was a fun part. I don't even call it stress, because it was just so much fun to do that you just didn't think of it was work.
Yeah, I can only imagine because from the things that I've heard is that like covering baseball, this is even from a like news reporter type of perspective, it takes a lot because you got to get at the ballpark, 2 hours before the game, and you're there
Oh,
probably like 2 hours afterwards. So I can only imagine what it was, what it was like when you was doing that your
yeah.
internship with the company. What position was it again that you had with the company when you did it?
Was in the event production,
Okay.
in-game entertainment, as they call it in some places.
Yeah.
We call it event production, and at that time, so Yeah, well, I did my internship with them, and it was a great experience. I wasn't even thinking about being retained, but my boss at the time said, "You're coming back next year," and I'm like, "Okay, then fine by me," And he even fought his bosses and saying, "Well, wait a minute, he already did his internship. Why is he going to do another one?" Like, no, I want to put him on staff. And it's like, all right, you want to put him on? Go ahead. I mean, do it. And one thing led to another, and I was there going back for 8 years, and it was a great time.
Man, and then from there you catapulted and lost and launched your own sports agency.
Yeah,
So what was it like chasing after and getting your first client?
rough, rough. It was. I want to say rough. It was just challenging. I think that's a better word. Um, you have to put yourself out there. You
Mm-hmm.
know, people see the lights and the bright lights and the shiny objects of what the sports agency is all about, and that's not that's far from the truth. You have to grind. You got to put a lot of miles on your car. You got to go to different universities and scout potential future clients, because they can't be clients at the time that they're in college because they're amateurs.
Mm-hmm.
So in an agent role, at that point, you're seen as an advisor to these athletes, and that's pursuant to the NCAA guidelines that these guys and girls can have advisors. They just can't have agents. They can't sign representation contracts and whatnot, but they can have advisors to help guide them in their journey into professional sports. So, to go back to your question, uh, that first one was it was it was a great, because I went, just like I said, recruiting,
Mm-hmm.
and I spoke to scouts as well. That were for those at scouts that were nice enough to say, well,
Mm-hmm.
okay, some of them can be a little bit less nice. And you ask
Yeah.
them, who do you like here? And some of them say, well, I like this kid, I like that kid, and some will even go even more, give me more detail. Well, I think he's a 3-tool player or a 4-tool player. If he's a
Mm-hmm.
5-tool player, he's pretty big time in the program that he's in.
Right.
Um, so that's where I saw my first kid, and I approached him, and we talked, and set up a meeting with him and his parents. And you have to sell yourself to the student athlete as well as the parents, because the parents are normally entrusting you to guide their son or daughter um, towards their professional goals. So when I got my first one, that kind of set the bar, and because I really didn't know what I was doing, to be honest
Yeah.
with you. But it all worked out, and that player got drafted in the MLB draft for the Seattle Mariners, and it was a great time. Seeing the process and learning the process from beginning towards draft, towards him signing his professional contract, and then a representation agreement with my agency, and going forward from there.
That's well awesome because the fact that he got drafted too. Because I know baseball is, I mean, it's so many different tiers. You got triple
Yeah.
A ball, double A ball, single A ball. You even
Mhm.
got other different tiers within just those top three. And to be able to have someone drafted, and you be able to represent them, and just to see, just to kind of speak to your career where you started to where you're at now,
Right.
I think it's incredible, especially in the game of baseball because
Yeah.
uh, it's just so much that goes into to baseball in general.
Absolutely.
Um, what's some of the stuff that you wish you knew then that you know now?
Uh, I really wished I knew more about the operations
Mm-hmm.
of a team.
Okay.
Um, when I say operations, I'm talking about a major league team. I really wish I knew more about the recruiting phase of athletes, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not easy. It is definitely not easy. One of the things that I learned throughout the journey was, if you want to represent uh, these athletes, you got to be licensed in the state that you're in. I'm in Florida, so I'm licensed in the state of Florida. You cannot talk to a student athlete without being licensed in the state of Florida. And for those that want to try to get into this industry, that's the first thing you got to get. So I don't know if that answers the question. Stuff that I've learned or wish that I knew. Those are the things that maybe I should have learned sooner, like in high school, because in high school don't really teach this kind of stuff. Although you really, I was all into sports and stuff like that, and I knew I wanted to represent players in some way, shape, or form. But you don't get this kind of education in high school. And if they did, I mean, although high school sports are huge, especially baseball down here in Florida, for example, football in Texas, although baseball is big in Texas too. If you would have known at an earlier age what it took to be able to break into the business at that time, you could have done things earlier in your career to try to make that happen sooner, and learn the business more before you put yourself out there trying to say, okay, look, I'm an agent or whatever, and I like to talk to you. You know what I mean? I mean, the sooner you get the education you need to join this industry, the better it is.
When did you start acquiring like all the knowledge and stuff for being an agent?
For me, it was writing, I think in college, around 1989. I graduated high school in 1988, so I'm not kind of aging myself. But it was during, well, let me take that back. It wasn't during 1989. It was like during like 1992 or 3. But I do remember the impetus that got me to it, and it was Dave Stewart. Are you familiar with Dave Stewart?
No, not exactly. No.
Dave Stewart was one of the most intimidating pitchers for the Oakland A's in 1989.
Okay.
He was part of the World Series champions in 1989.
Okay, I'll follow.
When you saw him on the mound, he wasn't an unreal imposing figure.
Yeah.
Not real bulky or anything like that. But when he looked into the catcher, you were like, oh boy, what's this man gonna throw? And he threw hard. He threw hard. And what inspired me was that after his playing career was done, I saw an interview that he did, and he was a sports agent at the time. So and I was like, wait a minute, he's now a sports agent. So that's when the wheel started, going off in my head and saying, let me look into that. Let me look into that. And that was the impetus of what, got me wanting to get into the business.
Wow. His nickname was Smoke, right?
I don't know if it was Smoke or not. I can't confirm that.
Okay.
But you know what? It might as well have been, because he threw hard.
especially in that era of time, because even like it was a rarity when you see hard throwers, and nowadays it's like if you don't have a hard thrower in your team, someone that's pumping.
Well, everybody throws hard now in baseball.
Yeah.
Everybody throws, everybody. I mean, you could get pitchers like 95 to 100, all in starting lineup and as well as the bullpen.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, when you threw 95, 96, it was a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And especially if you were still going in the 7th or 8th inning throwing Smoke, it was a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
So I remember I had the pleasure of meeting him at one of the baseball's winter meetings a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, like, you were the reason I got into athletic representation. I saw an interview you did, and it just touched me so much that I'm like, I started doing research, and I said, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And he was so gracious enough. He gave me his number and everything, and said if he call me anytime if you have any questions or whatever. And we haven't spoken to him since, but and I know he's no longer an agent. He got into the baseball operations side of the thing. I think he was a general manager for the Arizona Diamondbacks at one point or another. So I don't know what he's doing now, but I gave him. I thanked him when I met him that day, and it was great.
It's always good to have those people that kind of inspired you, or kind of help prepare your career, especially when you're young. You see people like, yo, that's what I want to do. If you can't, make it, say, professionally, you can still be around the game in some type of capacity. And sometimes some people just don't get the chance to see those people in their lives. So I'm glad that you was in the position to kind of see, someone that you like, and or I saw a career that you wanted to pursue, or and took interest in it. Because, like I said, many people don't really get the opportunity to do that.
Right. You're right.
Um, so from your perspective, because I used to play, so I used to play baseball in high school and part of my college career. How has do you feel as though baseball needs to change? Because a lot of people are starting to say, the game is boring, or the game is slow, slow paced, or it's not, fast. But people have been talking about that for years. So what's your perspective on the game of baseball today?
I, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a purist.
Okay.
I don't like the changes that
Mm-hmm.
the game has made. For example, going into a tie game at the end of nine, you're starting the game with a run on second base.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I think it's an unfair advantage to the team that's coming up on offense. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
by starting with somebody on second base, it brings pressure on one unneeded pressure on the pitcher
Yeah.
at the time. I mean, it's different if a guy gets a hit off of you and it's a double.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say
That's a
starting the
run.
inning, that's different. But you're already starting the inning with somebody on second base. I don't like it. I really don't. All in try to expedite the game. The game doesn't have a time clock. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like other sports. It was developed that way for a reason. You have to have a winner at the end, and you have to do it after either 27 outs or how many outs after that, after a 9 inning game.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I don't like, and I'm kind of nitpicking here, is the intentional walk. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
in the games prior, I forgot when the rule changed, but you had to throw 4 pitches in
Yep.
order to walk a hitter.
Yep.
Now you just say put them on first. I mean, those 4 pitches that the pitcher used to have to throw can change the results of a game. For example, if you have a runner on second and third and you want to load the bases, you have to throw those 4 pitches. Let's say a pitch gets away from the catcher, you got a runner scoring in from third base. That could either tie the game or put the offensive team in front, or even walk off the game. You
Yeah.
know, so I remember a couple of years ago, back in the '90s, they were intentionally walking Miguel Cabrera when he was with the Marlins, and the
Mm-hmm.
pitcher uh, didn't throw the ball outside enough, and Miguel just took it and hit a line drive to right field, and we got Hanley Ramirez was on second base, and he wound up scoring.
Yeah.
That's the purity of the game, in my
Yeah.
opinion. That's the stuff that needs to come back to the game, in my opinion. It also, and the shifting of players on the infield. You have 3 players on the right side. We're going to got a left-handed hitter up there. Drives me insane. Uh,
Really.
it drives me insane. I don't like the shifting. If it creates less excitement in the game when you have a regular starting 5, or starting 6 in the infield where they're all playing the positions 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
Um, and your hitter is whoever it is at the plate is either going to hit the ball through the infield or they're going to make a spectacular play defensively.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think is missing from the game. That's what I think the defensive plays that would normally be like, oh, wow. You know what I mean? Like a
Yeah.
short going in the hole, like a Derek Jeter making a jumping throw.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the kind of plays that are missing from the game. You might still get them every now and then,
Mm-hmm.
but when do you normally get them? When all players are playing their individual positions at the right positions. You
This
see
is
what
true.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that to me is what baseball should get back to, and stop worrying about. Well, the game is too slow. The game needs to speed up. We need to come to the same level or as the NBA or the NFL or the NHL because our game is boring. It's not boring. It's not boring. For those who love the game, they are gonna follow the game.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's the old generation, my generation, the one coming up before after us.
Mm-hmm.
Those that love the game will always follow the game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's up to baseball to do a better job of marketing the game to all generations at all levels,
Mm-hmm.
preschool, high school, college. They got to do a better job of marketing the game to their audience. Right now, unfortunately, you don't have a free game on network television. You know, before when I was growing up, you had NBC's Baseball Game of the Week.
Yeah.
Well, you had local channels carrying games. You know,
Yeah.
back in Jersey, it was Channel 11 or Channel 9 and WFOR.
Hmm.
You know, carrying Mets games, WPIX carrying Yankee games. You know, down here in Florida, when I first time, the Marlins had their local television network carrying their games. There was no cable needed. It was a local television broadcast. Now you can't get a free game hardly unless you have some type of cable subscription. It's really disheartening in my opinion. You know, baseball should needs to market their game better, and one of the ways is to get those games on free networks, in my opinion, in order to broaden the horizons to another
Hmm.
generation of fans.
Yeah, at least some games, because it's now before you could always at least like it's like for example, I'm not a biggest Cubs fan, but I knew I'm a Sox fan. But I know that you could always catch the Cubs, late at night on a Sunday, something or just even throughout the week on your Monday night game. And I didn't even realize that they don't have any games that's really on TV networks now because everything is on some type of paid subscription because everyone's trying to make that profit right now.
Right.
There's a reason why like the Cubs went to Marquee, and it wasn't the first team to do that because there was other teams that partner with their own specific some teams have their own specific app or streaming services that they stream the games through and stuff.
Right.
But yeah, I didn't even realize that, and that does kind of stink that it's like that nowadays.
Yeah.
Now the shifting, I don't really per se mind the shifting because I mean if the only thing the hitter just get to stick the bag out there, they can flip it, to the opposite direction of a shift. But I don't mind that, but I do get your perspective of, the spectacular plays because you do miss some of the stuff that the shortstop diving up the middle or the shortstop going to the right to try to make a special dive and get up and throw the guy out in the first place. So still try to turn a double play and stuff like that. So
Could you imagine Ozzy Smith playing with the Cardinals, playing a shift and not making the plays that he did at shortstop during his career?
yeah, probably not.
I mean, I just can't see. I couldn't fathom
Yeah.
that. You know what I mean? And not just Ozzie Smith, but I'm singling him out because he was one of my favorite players growing up.
Hmm.
It's turning a double play with Tommy Hurt for the Cardinals.
Hmm.
Um, even Jeter. I mean, can you imagine Jeter playing a shift and having all those plays that he made going deep in the hole taken away? I can't. I'm sorry, I can't.
Yeah.
It's the purest in me.
No, I get it. I think that we still, we need that purest perspective because I mean those perspectives are golden, and then sometimes we get too caught up in the now moment that we only are the now people look at like this, at this part of the view, and then the purists look at the overall view of the game. And it's good to have perspective like that to help decide the future of baseball. So but yeah, I just had to ask because it's not often I get a chance to really talk baseball with
Yeah, yeah,
people
yeah, yeah.
on capture the game. So this is baseball is one of my hidden joys that I have. So I grew up playing basketball and then I converted over to baseball. So
That's awesome. That's awesome.
yeah. But yeah, so okay, so going back to the agent though, real quick. So what's for someone that is trying to pursue being an agent, what's the best piece of advice that you can give them today?
Education, 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 education.
Mm-hmm.
That's. I mean, I can't fathom that enough. I can't emphasize that. I think that's a better word. Enough. Um, I've been doing this for about 12 years, and I still am learning stuff every single day
Mm-hmm.
about the business, about player representation.
Mm-hmm.
There are several texts out there that you can purchase that'll teach you about representing athletes,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all well and fine. But you really have to get into the nitty gritty of the business. And when I say that, I mean you got to know your NCAA rules. You could go to ncaa.org, if I'm not mistaken, and order a copy of the NCAA amateurism rules. You got to study those left and right to make sure that you don't commit a violation with respects to amateur athletes. Um, Contact your state Secretary of State, your local Secretary of State or Department of Business and Professional Regulations, and see how much an athlete agent license costs. For example, that's one of the first questions when I speak at when I go back to my alma mater, and when I talk to students, I ask them, I give them a figure, and I ask them, what do you think this figure represents? And some of the answers will be like, well, that's your first paycheck, or you know, um, some of them are like saying, well, I what's with the number? We don't get the number. Like, and I try to give them subtle hints as to think, use your mind as to what this number could represent if you guys want to become athlete agents. And remember how I say the word athlete agents. A lot of people have the connotation of being a sports agent. Well, you're not necessarily representing the sport. Okay, you're representing the athlete in the sport. So although the terms are used interchangeably, I like to use the word athlete agent because that's how it's written in the Florida rules here as to the type of licensure that I have. So I give them a figure and they're like, they're thinking and they're thinking. And then eventually I tell them, when they don't get the answer, I like, before you can talk to, and I'll preface this, if you're with a student in the classroom, I'll say, before you can talk to a student athlete, what's the one thing you have to have in your pocket?
I was gonna say money, but
now, I'll repeat the question. Before
yeah.
you talk to a student athlete, what's the one thing that you have to have in your pocket?
Before I talk to the student athlete, what's the one thing I must have in my pocket? I would say, is it in state?
I'm sorry.
So, I would say I would say not. I'll call it a certificate, but just the fact that you need to have you need to be registered.
You need to be registered. You're on the right track. You're on the right track. You need to have a license.
Okay.
You need to have an athlete agent license. And I should have prefaced this by saying, what do you have to have in your pocket before you talk to a collegiate student athlete?
Okay.
Okay. High school doesn't apply because they're not members of the NCAA.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I could you still want to be licensed, obviously, but you're not breaking any NCAA rules when you speak to a high school athlete, versus a collegiate athlete. Once you're talking to a collegiate athlete, whether it's NCAA 1, 2, or 3, divisions 1, 2, or 3, or any NAIA, or any junior college, or any college that has any type of affiliation to student athletes, you got to be licensed. So when I give them that answer, all the light bulbs go in head. Like, oh,
yeah,
before you could talk to a collegiate student athlete, and for example, in Florida, and I'm sure it's the same across many states, if not all, you have to have that license, because if you don't, you're actually committing a crime.
That's crazy.
Yep, but it's true.
That is crazy. What's some of the things that you look for in athletes, if you can share?
Oh well, in baseball, there's so many factors that you look into from the athletic standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
You have to study the student athlete that you're trying to target, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Their skill level, what a major league baseball team would probably look into that student athlete for, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If you can, like I said before, if you talk to scouts and, you find one that's nice enough to talk to you and say, just to get an opinion from that scout to say, look, I'm looking at this kid. What do you know about him? And preface that you're an agent advisor, and you're just trying to get information for you and potentially representing that student athlete in the future.
Mm-hmm.
What they see in that student athlete. Also, when you actually get to talk to that student athlete, look into their bio, look into their history. Where do they come from?
Yeah.
Who the family members are.
Mm-hmm.
Are the parents together? Are they separated? How involved are the parents in their child's collegiate career? Those are things that you have to know or get to know, especially when you're trying to recruit a student athlete that you want to represent.
Mm-hmm.
Those are fundamentals. Those are fundamentals because a lot of student athletes put all their trust in their parents, which is the right thing to do, before they go on and take on some type of professional relationship with an agent advisor at the time they're being recruited. So you got to know how to talk to parents. You got to be an open book with them.
Mm-hmm.
You got to invite them to look into your background as well
Yeah.
for credibility purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Anybody can say I'm an agent advisor. I talked to some parents a couple of months ago, um, where there was another individual saying he was an athlete agent and whatever, uh, and they asked me, well, like, do you know this person? I'm like, no, I don't. They're like, did you do your due diligence on him? They're like, what do you mean? Did you look and see if he's licensed in the state of Florida? It's like, no, we didn't check. Well, okay, well, run that person through the state system and see if he has a license. Guess what? He didn't have
The license.
a license. Okay, so they were like, wow, I can't believe this guy actually tried to do this. Well, the guy was probably trying to scam him.
Yeah.
And so when I told him, look, here's my license number. You could look me up in the state's database,
Yeah.
and you'll see that my license is active in good standing, and anything that I do wrong, you can call them and make a complaint against me,
Yeah.
which would be horrible for me because it would put my credibility, through the floor. And
Right.
those kind of words get out a lot faster than good ones.
Mm. Mm-hmm. I can believe that happens often.
Happens all the time.
Yeah. Just because a lot of people may not know the process.
Right.
That and people just wake up, be like, oh, I'm gonna be a sports agent. I can represent you, and then try to, if someone doesn't, especially parents or families that
Right.
doesn't know any better, they can get easily swept up in that scheme. So,
Absolutely.
people get scammed all the time, whether it's just sports or just everyday life.
Everyday life, everyday life. But sports is one of the big ones, especially
Yeah.
if you don't know people in the industry and they just are posing as agents or even team representatives.
Mm-hmm.
There's I started representing players in basketball, and
Mm.
believe it or not, I was a FIBA licensed agent, and the phone calls I would get from GMs,
Yeah.
representing teams overseas,
Yeah.
asking, well, look, we need $400 or $500 for uniforms or whatever. We'll pay you back. I'm like,
That
what?
they need $400,000.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I've I talked to some kids that got scammed before I worked with them and saying, oh, this guy told me he needed 2,000 for my plane ticket and for my hotel, and before I know it, no plane tickets ever came. There was no hotel. There was no nothing. They were just people scamming them. Unfortunately,
Wow.
yeah, it was pretty bad.
Oh man. It sucks to hear stories about that
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
mean, no one likes to get scammed. Um, I know I fell into a scam once before, but that was my own doing. It's crazy. As technical as I am, I shouldn't fall for scams, but it happens. It happens to anyone when people are vulnerable. But yeah, that concludes our first part of our podcast. We're going to transition to our rapid fire round. So it's our game within the game segment. So my question for you is: are you ready to play?
Sure, let's go. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna start off simple. The simple question, the introduction question to get you started. Oatmeal cookies or chocolate chip cookies?
Oatmeal.
My man's. Even though I've been cheating on oatmeal cookies with chocolate chip, but I love oatmeal
I got
cookies.
some in my pantry right now.
What, chocolate chip or oatmeal?
Oatmeal.
Okay. What
Now here's,
kind?
now here's a question for you: iced or not iced?
Ooh. It depends on the brand. I'll take the ice one.
Okay.
But I could be a purist. I love my oatmeal cookies. They're just soft, a little chewy.
Uh,
That's how I prefer my oatmeal cookies.
so do I. So do I. I love dunking them in milk and getting them soft and then eating them.
So you take it an extra step. I haven't done. I haven't. So I grew up eating a lot of chocolate chip cookies, so that's why I became like a first fan. But then like over time, I switched to oatmeal. But
Right.
I haven't done the extra step yet to start dipping my oatmeal cookies in milk yet.
No, well, give it a try. I'm telling you, you're gonna remember me. You're like gonna say, "Man, this is good."
I'm gonna shoot you an email. I'm like, yo,
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
all
yeah.
right.
I've been looking forward to it. I've been looking forward to it.
What's the brand? What's your go-to brand for oatmeal cookies?
Uh, I get the Walmart brand.
Okay.
Believe it or not, they are really, really good.
All right. I'm on it. I'm trying that out next.
All right, sounds good.
All right. TV shows and movies.
TV shows.
Which TV show you watching right now?
Uh, right now, well, it's put it this way. My wife and I are big into soap operas,
Okay.
the Spanish ones.
Okay.
We just finished watching a rerun of one of our favorite soap operas, Betty the Ugly, which
Okay.
translation is Betty la Fea in
Okay.
Spanish. It's a Colombian soap opera from back in the 90s, I want to say.
Okay.
And it's so good in that you don't care how many times you watched it, you could watch it again and learn something new from it. You know,
Yeah.
although the memory bank was like, oh, this is about to happen now, or wait a minute, I don't remember that happening. Oh wow, and before you know it, you're like all oh, I can't believe this happened, and then you look forward to the new episode and stuff like that. So that's what we just finished watching. Um, TV shows, other TV shows that I get into, I like Law and Order,
Okay.
Special Victims Unit. You
Okay.
know, I can watch that. I watch Chicago PD all the time. Those are my go-tos.
Yeah, it's for me. It's been Chicago Fire. I know my brother is a big fan of Chicago PD. I fell off of watching the PD. I think that's one of the things I'm gonna go back and watch and catch up on. I'm gonna ask. I have some Hispanic friends. I'm gonna ask about the TV show, and if it's a good one, then I may see if I can try to uh try to watch it, and then if not, if they say don't watch it, then I'm gonna send you an email like, how you watching this? How
All
you
right.
watch this terrible show?
Just get if you watch it, it's in Spanish, so you have to get the subtitles on it. So
That's cool. I watch things with subtitles all the time, so that doesn't bother me.
it's really cool. It's really
Oh,
fun.
okay, okay. So by okay, so I'm gonna ask you a couple more questions here. All right, so Randy Johnson or Roger Clemens?
Ooh, ooh, wow, that's a tough question.
That's what I love.
That's a tough question. I probably have to go with Randy Johnson
Mm-hmm.
because he was just that more intimidating on the mound.
Yeah,
Although Roger Clemens was intimidating too,
yeah.
was, but there was something about Randy Johnson and that 6'10", I think,
Mm-hmm.
frame,
He tall.
okay, um, that would come at you. I mean, the mound is 60 feet 6 inches, but when the actual pitcher releases the ball, it could be somewhere between 58 and 59
Yeah,
feet, coming at you at 96, 97, which looks like it's 100, 105
yeah.
coming out. And, he, not that he would go at your head or anything like that, but if you saw something close, he'd be freaking out. So I would
Mm-hmm.
say Randy Johnson.
I'm picking Randy Johnson. Randy was like one of my first pitchers I fell in love with growing up. It was between him and Pedro Martinez. Like I try to sit down and watch them every time I got a chance to actually watch baseball. So
I tell my clients that are pitchers, most of them come from the Dominican Republic. Try to
hmm
emulate what Pedro Martinez did.
absolutely,
Don't try to be Pedro.
yeah,
Nobody will ever be Pedro, but try to emulate his technique, his mechanics.
yeah,
I send them video all the time and to study and say, look at where his feet placement are. Look how he finishes his delivery.
hmm
Um, look where his arm is at the end. And Pedro's not a big guy. He's only like 5'10". Okay,
yeah,
maybe he was 180 pounds at the time he was playing,
hmm
but he was one of biggest intimidators in the game at the time when he was playing.
oh yeah, and I was definitely glad to see him get a ring
Yeah,
by the end of his career, because that dude had a phenomenal career.
he did.
So I'm definitely happy to see that. All right. Derek Jeter or Ozzie Smith?
Ozzy.
Okay. I fig-
Ozzy.
I figure you stick with your favorite. So I figured,
He didn't have the biggest stick as Derek did. Derek,
yeah,
he was a better offensive player, but Ozzy was just a magician on the field.
yeah.
His ability to make plays deep in the hole, up the
Hmm.
middle, uh, was incredible. So I'd probably take Ozzie Smith.
Okay. Yeah, for me, it's so many, like since I fell in love with baseball like later in my life, there's so much baseball I feel like I missed out on or not
Yeah,
really got a chance to watch or hear. You just always hear stories and highlights about how amazing some of these players was,
right.
and unless like I take the time to sit down and be a historian of the game, I probably won't get a chance to really hear or witness some of the greatness that players like Ozzy was, and just other some of the people that came around in that era. Favorite sports moment you've seen or witnessed?
That I've seen or
Or
witnessed. Um,
yeah,
my favorite sports moment that I seen. I wasn't at the ballpark. 1986 when the Mets won the World Series.
mm, yeah, that's a good choice. I know, and that's special to my heart just because my grandfather was he was a Mets fan. And so I know he was still around at that time. So and I know he was a big Mets fan. My brother has a hat with the Mets logo on it with his initials stitched in it. So I know that was probably a good iconic memory for him. So that's why I keep my eyes on the Mets just
Yeah.
because of the fact that they're actually doing good this year too. So
They're in first place for now. So
yeah,
we'll see. It's not how you start; it's how you finish.
this is
So
true. This is
we'll see,
baseball.
especially in baseball. We'll see how they do at the end of the season,
Yeah.
where they are.
Okay. Okay. Um, Speaking of the end of the season, so by the end of the season, what would have happened? If you was to pick a favorite right now, or if you was to say, uh, someone's gonna win, is gonna put up this amount of home runs or whatever, what's your prediction for baseball by the end of this year?
Wow. I think. I mean, from an offensive standpoint, uh, Kyle Schwarber,
Yeah.
Nationals, might
Hmm.
win the home run title. He's been on a
He's been on a
tear
tear.
lately, but so
Yeah.
has um, Otani in
Yeah.
Los Angeles. He has 27 home runs. It's not even halfway point. It's like effortless, and he's a
Hmm.
two-way player.
Hmm.
So it's going to be one of those guys is going to be the home run champ, but maybe each with a different league. So they probably be the individual home run champions in each league.
Hmm.
Um, I think Otani is going to win the home run derby in the All Star game.
Hmm.
Um, we'll see how that goes
Yeah.
since he's participating. Uh, Again, I'm being biased. I'd like to see the Mets win their division at the end of the season, so that way they're assured of their playoff spot. They don't have to play in or play one of those uh, one wild card games just to get in to play another wild card game to play the winner of the division and hopefully move on there. I mean, I just hope they just win the division outright. National League East champions, and they can go forward from there. So those are my predictions right now, my early predictions.
Okay. Okay. I like that. I'm penciling them in.
Mhm.
And we'll be in communication afterwards just to talk
Absolutely.
the season. But no, those are actually good picks. Speaking of two-way players, I want to ask you this: are you starting to see more two-way players because of Otani?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, they're just too far in between those kind of players. I mean, I think the one before Otani was Bo Jackson, and not
Yeah.
even. Well, and I say and that's incorrect because he wasn't a two-way player. He was a two sports player.
Yeah, he was two sport
Um,
players.
he was a two sports player. So a two-way player in baseball, uh, I don't see it happening. I think the last one that I can't even remember. It was probably Babe Ruth,
Mm-hmm.
who was a pitcher,
Pitcher
and then he turned into the Bambino.
yeah.
I mean, so, and even then, he wasn't a two-way player in the general sense like Otani is.
Yeah.
He was a pitcher, then he converted to outfield and became the Babe. So, I just don't see it's just way too difficult. You have to be so talented to do both. I just don't see it happening again.
Mm-hmm.
At least not anytime soon.
Yeah, I definitely believe that too. I'll say that as long as Otani continue to have the career that he has and stay healthy, it'll be another 10 years before you see the effects of him. Of players like him of what he will have on the game. So.
Right.
Okay, so you get a chance to take over any organization. Who do you choose?
The Mets, obviously.
Of course.
Yes, of course.
What?
That would be it.
I mean, you could have gone back to Florida. I mean, you could have went to Miami.
No.
No.
No. Like I said, I'm a purist, and I love the Marlins. I worked with them for 8 years. I root for them to win. I just was at my first Marlins game this year, last weekend with my wife and my niece. Okay. And I had a great time. But I couldn't do it. I mean, I would have to take the Mets first. Okay. And then if there's no openings, then we'll talk about the Marlins.
Okay. Favorite baseball stadium?
Shea
Field.
The old Shea Stadium. Citi Field is beautiful, but there's nothing like Shea Stadium. My wife actually got me a certified photo of the ballpark before it was demolished. I have that in a corner somewhere in the house. That was my all-time favorite ballpark.
Definitely iconic to the game, that's for sure. Definitely iconic. Alrighty. The hardest question of all is, what is your social media, so that people that would like to follow your career, they can either reach out to you or tweet you. So yeah, what's your social medias?
Well, I'm on Facebook. You can find me at JL Sports and Entertainment. I'm on the same thing with Twitter and Instagram, JL Sports and Entertainment. You can find me there. Follow me. Send me a DM with any questions that you might want or have, and I'll be glad to get back to you.
Awesome. Well, that concludes another episode of Capturing the Game. If you aren't already, go ahead, please give us a follow on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, subscribe. Facebook. So you can find us on Instagram at capturing_the_game_pod. That's Instagram. For Twitter, it's CTG podcast. So that's Capturing the Game, CTG_podcast on Twitter. On YouTube, just punch in Capturing the Game podcast. Go ahead, subscribe. We've been growing on there, and we really, truly appreciate every subscriber that we have so far and every listener. And just on Facebook, just the usual, Capturing the Game. So thank you for tuning in another episode. We look forward to our next guest that we'll have on next Thursday. So thank you for tuning in and taking a chance and listening to me and Juan today as we talk about baseball.